One of the most famous monsters in the world, Dracula is a name synonymous with all things vampires. This Prince of Darkness has become the face of an entire subgenre of horror. But before Bela Lugosi turned him into a sparkly heartthrob and moviegoers filled theaters to watch him twirl around shirtless, Dracula was meant to strike fear into the hearts of audiences. Bram Stoker's novel The Unholy Book of Dracula brought us the iconic Transylvanian nobleman whose thirst for blood would lead to his downfall. But there are some things about this legendary creature that might surprise you. Here are 5 dark truths behind the Dracula legend. Number 5, Vlad the Impaler. Dracula wasn't born with fangs or an insatiable bloodlust. No. In life, he was known as Vlad the Impaler. He was even knighted as Sir Vlad the Impaler by his peers, though we're not sure if they were being complimentary. Vlad Impaler was the nickname given to Vlad III of Wallachia. And while he was by no means a saint, it's likely that Bram Stoker used Vlad as inspiration for several reasons. For one, Vlad's honorific name was Dracula. Okay, well, technically it was Dracula, but we won't question where Stoker got that from. Vlad the Impaler ruled over Wallachia between 1448 and 1476. And when he took power, he did so at a very young age. Supposedly only 18 years old when he became prince, Vlad's reign was marked by brutal violence. While some accounts credit him with defeating invading Ottoman forces, he was also notorious for selling prisoners into slavery and taxing his people to the point of starvation. Vlad had a particular penchant for cruelty, but we'll get to that in a bit. But first, what's a fun fact? Did you know that ancient Thebes once assembled an elite military force consisting of 150 pairs of gay male lovers? They went undefeated in war. Want to know more about them and other historical LGBTQ icons? Check out our series, available now on a streaming service. Number 4, the blood rituals of medieval Europe. Vlad the Impaler may have been the perfect candidate to be Stoker's Dracula. But what made Vlad so violent? Well, he grew up in a time and place where blood drinking was not unheard of. Blood rituals and practices involving the ingestion of blood date back to the Stone Age, with many cultures throughout history partaking in blood-drinking ceremonies. But during the Middle Ages, blood drinking took on a new meaning. It became associated with Satanism. And during the infamous Black Death outbreak, blood drinking became linked to vampires. Rumors began to spread that the plague was caused by demons entering victims' bodies through their blood. To protect themselves, people began drinking animal blood, believing it would prevent them from contracting the disease. This may seem pretty silly to modern viewers, but remember, these people were living during the darkest days of the plague. When death was knocking at every door, people clung to whatever hope they could find. Number 3, the scholomance, the devil's school. Of course, the best way to prevent yourself from becoming the victim of the plague was to avoid the demon's influence altogether. And during the 15th century, the best way to do that was to stay away from the scholomance. A scholomance was a type of academy where students gathered to study magic. But unlike your typical Hogwarts, a solomance was a place where teachers and students alike dabbled in the darkest arts imaginable. Blood magic was a staple of these schools, and it was believed that through the use of blood, a person could cast powerful spells and make pacts with demons. One of the most notorious figures in these schools was a man named Solomon, hence the name Solomance. Rumor has it that Solomon learned the ways of blood magic from the devil himself, and after mastering forbidden arts, he wrote down everything he learned in a book known as the Grand Grimoire. This grimoire, or book of magic, became a staple of the black magic community and even inspired Stoker's choice of name for his most infamous villain. After all, what better way to pay homage to the Prince of Darkness than by naming him after the person who sold his soul to him? No, the real Castle Dracula. If you've ever been to Romania, then chances are you've probably visited Bran Castle. It's been called Dracula's Castle, and is supposedly the place where Stoker's character imprisoned Mina after turning her into a vampire. But this isn't the castle Stoker described in his book. Stoker's novel makes several references to Dracula's home in Transylvania, calling it a large, gloomy, and silent castle. It was surrounded by a village, a park, a church, a pond, and high walls. But Bran Castle doesn't really match Stoker's description. While rumors persist that Vlad the Impaler stayed in the castle at some point, there's no evidence that he ever lived there. So why is Bran Castle so closely associated with Dracula? Well, when Stoker published The Unholy Book of Dracula in 1897, he drew inspiration from various locations in Transylvania. Most scholars agree that the town of Sigosora was the basis for the fictional village of Transylvania. And instead of Bran Castle, it was likely that Stoker based Dracula's residence on a castle in Hunyad, which actually translates to Castle Dracula. But because Hunyad Castle is in ruins and Bran Castle is fully intact, tourists flock to the latter, eager to catch a glimpse of where the Prince of Darkness may have lived. It's no wonder that those responsible for running Bran Castle have reportedly had enough of the association and are trying to distance the landmark from the famed vampire. And speaking of Stoker's novel, let's look at how it started it all. Number 1, the 1897 book that changed everything. Today, we associate vampires with everything spooky, but in reality, folklore surrounding blood drinkers and reanimated corpses had persisted for centuries before Stoker penned his tale of terror, and it's because of this that we owe him a debt of gratitude. Stoker's masterful storytelling gave life to the modern vampire legend, and yet he wouldn't be the last to capitalize on the craze he started. Over the years, countless authors have taken their own spin on the tale of Dracula, and none of them compare to Stoker's original work. Some versions have made Dracula a tragic hero, while others have turned him into a misunderstood anti-hero. But it's Stoker's dark, disturbing depiction of a vampire that continues to resonate with readers to this day. His book introduced several key elements to the vampire mythos that remain relevant in today's stories. For example, Stoker established the idea that vampires can only be killed by driving a wooden stake through their hearts. But the author didn't come up with all of these ideas on his own. Stoker was inspired by a number of legends and folk tales, as well as stories from his friend, fellow author Arthur Machen. But regardless of where he got his inspiration, Stoker managed to create a monster that continues to live in the minds of readers over 100 years after his novel was published. Dracula was never just a story. It was a mirror reflecting real horrors the world tried to forget, and maybe, just maybe, still lives in the shadows today. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out another recent series. You'll find all kinds of terrifying tales and haunting histories that will leave you up all night long.